First Corinthians is a book in which Paul has to deal with so many issues in this church. And he goes through and deals with it one by one. It's almost like every single chapter is a different issue. This church is just loaded with so many problems. But afterwards, Paul had written a letter that we now know as 1 Corinthians. After he wrote that letter that we now know as 1 Corinthians, false prophets crept into the church and had swayed the people, or the people's opinion of Paul. And they did this in order to gain the people's following. And most importantly, Paul's apostleship was questioned and was attacked and was challenged. Paul wrote 2 Corinthians to reestablish his apostolic authority in the church of Corinth. Beginning in chapter 11, Paul boasts in order to give credence to his apostleship. 2 Corinthians 11, 22 to 23 says, "Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. In labors, more abundant. In stripes, above measure. In prisons, more frequent. In deaths, oft. Of the Jews, 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I've been in the deep. In journeyings often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils by my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness." Now, if you're one of these false prophets in the church of Corinth, and you get this letter, and Paul is describing here all the things that he's gone through, you really have nothing to say. I mean, if Paul were to stand before us here today and explain to us, here's what I've gone through for the sake of Christ, can we question his position? Can we question his authority? There's no way. This list begins to document what Paul had experienced and endured in bringing the simple gospel of Christ to the Gentiles. And it's not just the trouble or the trials he suffered outside, but he also tells them how much he endured in his care for all the churches. He goes through that in the following verses. And he recounts even specific times in which he went through dangerous and perilous times in his life. In all of this, he summarizes that all of his glorying will be of the things which concern mine infirmities, verse 30 of chapter 11. He continues this glorying in chapter 12. And really, this glorying is not so that he would be praised. He's basically just giving credentials. He's giving the reasons why he is an apostle of Christ, a true apostle of Christ, and that what he taught the church of Corinth should be followed, rather than these false preachers that have come in. So he continues in chapter 12, and he tells them of the special revelations that he received of the Lord. Remember that he received special revelation on the way to Damascus. That was his salvation experience. Mm-hmm. That's described in Acts chapter 9, and also referenced in Acts chapter 26. This vision of the risen Christ on the Damascus road was the basis of Paul's apostleship. He also describes another special revelation here in chapter 12. In this chapter, he describes a man caught up into the third heaven. And this man, Paul likely referring to himself in the third person, was given revelations that he was not allowed to repeat on earth. Now, can you imagine being caught up into heaven? Can you imagine being in the place where God reigns and being given knowledge and understanding above anyone else that you know? Can you imagine how proud one might feel having received a special revelation? Well, Paul states this thought somewhat in the first part of verse 7. Unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations. And he also, again, repeats it at the end of the verse. Lest I should be exalted above measure. Let's look first at Paul's high position. Paul was definitely an apostle of Jesus Christ. In this verse, he's in the middle of describing an experience in which he shows the special position he had as an apostle of Jesus Christ. And even more than most, he had been given the privilege he'd been given the privilege to have had many revelations and many visions. Paul was given such a special task in his conversion that he was also given special training and experience in order to accomplish that task. Remember, God does not call us to something that he will not provide provide the means to do it.